Hello EVE Online, this is Mecha Gold. I'm the creator of Project Freefolk. As you know, Project Freefolk is about promoting a kind of EVE gameplay that is independent from the Lords of EVE. Because God knows, dependent ways of playing EVE is pretty much promoted everywhere. You are being told that the best way to start EVE is just joining Karma Fleet or Pandemic Horde or Brave. And I'm here to show you that there is an alternative. You can play this game alone. Solo is a viable, good way of playing EVE, and so on and so forth. Or you can join a small alliance or a small corporation. And you don't need to join a mega alliance or a huge entity to win EVE, if you will. And I'm starting this project with showing people ways to make ISK in EVE, which is a huge portion of the game itself, because we either need ISK for our PvP needs, or we just acquire wealth for its own sake. For some people it's the goal of EVE, for some people it's just funding of their habits. But overall, everyone needs to make ISK in this game, right? So the main purpose of this video series is showcasing some ways of ISK making that is independent from these lords and major alliances and so on and so forth. So suppose you are a line member in Goonswarm or Pandemic Legion or Test or whatever, and you are just unhappy with your leadership and the way you are being treated, but you're there because you think it provides the best way to make ISK for you, and you aspire to become a carrier rater or a super rater or a Rorqual miner. This is where I come in and tell you that there are better options. So let me start with a general outline of ISK making activities. I think the first meaningful distinction here is between PvP based ISK making and PvE based ISK making. So the PvP based ISK making is these methods are such that you deal with players on a daily basis to make your ISK. It includes scamming or stealing citadels or even killing ships and so on and so forth. And it's arguably the best way to play EVE for some, or to make ISK for some, but not everyone has access to this kind of play style because know-how restrictions or ship restrictions and so on and so forth. So these people are highly specialized people, and the average EVE player do not have the know-how or the access of this kind of gameplay. So I'm not going to promote this kind of gameplay here, even though it's arguably the best way to make ISK. Another very basic ISK making activity is just to buy Plex. And if you especially think that your ISK making activity feels like a job, then maybe you should buy Plex and just work in your real job instead. But the majority of EVE players, I think, make their ISK in terms of PvE methods, which are going to be the methods that I'm going to be talking about. So among the PvE methods of making ISK, there is mining, there is ratting, there's mission running, incursions, exploration, and lots of other stuff. And these are based on players' interaction with the environment, with the EVE environment, rather than directly with people. So another relevant distinction here is the active and the passive distinction. And so in the active ways of ISK making, you work for your ISK on keyboard. In the passive ways of ISK making, your ISK is usually made when you're offline. It's made over time. And some of the passive ways include PI and maybe manufacturing and the old system of Moongoo, which is being replaced by CCP right now. And this series is going to be about active ways, more or less, because that's what I usually do. I've never done production or other stuff, really. And another important concept in this series is scaling. So scaling means, so you have a method of ISK making, but does your ISK per hour increase when you get more accounts or more characters and so on and so forth? I think by far the best scaling income method in EVE is Rorqual mining in nullsec. which is an abomination because you're going to see, if you go to the right places, you're going to see 50, 60 rogue wells in the same belt, and I don't think there is an alternative to this kind of ISK making in EVE outside nullsec and rogue wells. So some of the worst scaling ISK making activities include capital ratting in nullsec, for example. That is something everyone or a lot of players are aspiring to, and that's one way the Lords of Eve can promote their dependent gameplay. And in this series, you will see there are lots of methods in lowsec, NPC nullsec, or wormholes that is actually better than, you know, ratting a Nyx or another super capital. So if you think you're not treated well in your alliance, but you're there because you aspire to be a carrier ratter or a super ratter, then I can safely say, after watching this video, you will learn about some better methods that you can do independently. To go back to scaling, so I have, in the faction warfare, I used 4 accounts, and then in wormholes, I'm using right now 10 accounts to farm ISK. So most of the methods here that is being presented will include having lots of accounts and lots of multiple monitors. But don't be discouraged if you have just 1 account and 1 monitor. These methods will still be applicable. It's just your ISK per hour will be lower, but still comparable to what you can do in the same ship in dependent ways of playing EVE. So I will first begin with faction warfare. The season 1 of this series will be about faction warfare. I think the season 2 will be about wormhole ratting, anomaly ratting, especially C5s. I'm thinking about doing seasons about NPC nullsec and about level 5 missions, but we'll see how it goes. I'll just release the first seasons and then first 2 seasons soon, and then I'll see what I can do next. Thanks for watching so far, and you can move on to the next video to begin with faction warfare guide.